I had spent more than $78,000 renovating the condo that, for 6 straight months, everyone in Daniel's family had called our wedding home. I chose every tile, every cabinet pull, every light fixture. I put nearly $20,000 on credit cards because the contractor needed materials paid for up front, while Daniel said his money was temporarily tied up in a short-term investment. I had once stood in that kitchen close to midnight, surrounded by drywall dust, imagining our first morning after the wedding, me making coffee there, while Daniel wandered in half awake. Then, one afternoon, when I went down to the building management office to activate resident access for moving day, I learned something very simple. The condo was not in Daniel's name. It was in his younger brother's, Evan Cross. Daniel's name was nowhere on the title. My name wasn't in the resident file. The emergency contact was Helen Cross, their mother. I called Daniel right there at the front desk. I said only one sentence. Unit 1605 is in Evan's name. The other end went silent. There was no, "What?" "No." "Are you sure?" No surprise at all. Just a short pause. But it was long enough. Daniel knew. What I did not know yet was that the truth was much worse. 1 week later, Evan's girlfriend would send me screenshots of a conversation between him and a real estate broker. In those messages, Evan asked when the final furniture would be installed. The broker replied that if the unit looked as good as the renderings, the listing price could be pushed significantly higher. Evan wrote, "Let Mara finish it first. Mom said not to tell her right now. After the wedding, if we need to sell, at least the place will already be upgraded." I had not been renovating my wedding home. I had been using my own money to increase the value of someone else's property. My name is Mara Ellison. I was 31. I lived in Chicago and worked as a senior product operations manager for a healthcare software company. I had been with Daniel Cross for 4 years. We had been engaged for 10 months. Our wedding was scheduled for the end of June at a hotel overlooking Lake Michigan. Invitations had gone out. The photographer was booked. The florist had been paid a deposit. The band had a signed contract. My dress was in final alterations. If everything had gone according to plan, in 27 days I would have become Mara Cross. And maybe because there were only 27 days left, Daniel's family believed that no matter what I discovered, I would be too committed to turn back. They were wrong. It started on a Tuesday afternoon in late May. I left work early to meet a delivery team at the condo. The building was in the South Loop, more than 30 stories tall, with a concierge desk, private garage, and resident access app. Unit 1605 was a 2-bedroom condo with a partial lake view. 6 months earlier, Helen had taken my hand in the empty living room and said, "Renovate it however you like. This will be your home with Daniel." I believed her. Not only because of what she said, Daniel was standing there too. He put an arm around my shoulders and smiled. "You decide everything. All I need is to come home and find you here." Evan was there too. He leaned against the doorway of the second bedroom and joked, "Make sure there's a sofa bed for me. I need somewhere to crash when I come over for games." Every one of them spoke as if the condo belonged to Daniel. Not one person said, "Oh, by the way, Mara, before you put your money into this place, there's one small detail. The actual owner is Evan." That afternoon, I had come because the building app would not let management change me from guest access to resident access. I assumed it was a system error. The concierge sent me to the management office. A woman named Nina Patel pulled up the account. "Unit 1605? Yes. You'll be moving in with Mr. Cross after the wedding?" "Yes, Daniel Cross." Nina looked at the screen, then at me. Her expression shifted, only slightly. I'm sorry, Ms. Ellison. The owner of record for Unit 1605 is Evan Cross. For a second, I thought I had misheard. Evan? Yes. Daniel's brother? I don't know the family relationship, but the owner on file is Evan Cross. I put both hands on the edge of the desk. Is Daniel a co-owner? Nina checked again. Not according to our current building records. Could your system just be outdated? I can't certify legal title in place of the county recorder, but our ownership information comes from the closing package and association records. Evan Cross is the owner on file. She turned the screen just enough for me to see the name without exposing other private information. Evan Cross. Emergency contact, Helen Cross. Authorized resident, none. Daniel wasn't there. Neither was I. The office air conditioning was cold. My palms felt colder. For 6 months, I had practically lived in Unit 1605 every weekend. I checked demolition, selected paint, approved the electrical plan, argued with the contractor when the backsplash was installed incorrectly. Once I had shown up at a showroom with a fever over 101 because the cabinet supplier delivered the wrong veneer. I used 2 years of bonuses to pay for the renovation. I thought I was building a home. According to the building, I wasn't even an authorized resident. I thanked Nina, then walked out to the lobby. I stood by the glass doors watching traffic move along Michigan Avenue. Then I called Daniel. He answered after 2 rings. Hey, babe, I'm about to go into a meeting. I asked directly. Unit 1605 is in Evan's name. Silence. 2 seconds. But I knew Daniel too well. If he genuinely had not known, he would have asked what I was talking about. He didn't. After a moment, he said, You're at the building? Yes. Mara, this isn't something we should discuss over the phone. Then answer one question. Did you know? He exhaled. Yes. I closed my eyes. For how long? From the beginning. I opened them again. People walked past me laughing. A flower delivery cart rolled across the lobby. Everything around me was so ordinary that I almost wanted to laugh. Then why is the condo in Evan's name? Daniel answered quickly, like he had prepared this explanation. When we bought it, my debt-to-income ratio wasn't great because of my student loans and an old business credit line. Evan had a cleaner mortgage profile. Mom and Dad were putting up the down payment, so the family decided it would be simpler to have Evan as the borrower. Daniel, I'm listening. If it was only about the mortgage, why didn't you ever tell me? The place is still a family asset. Once we're married, we can... I asked why you didn't tell me. He went quiet. I continued. For 6 months, I put money into Evan's property. Not once did you think I needed to know. Mara, I didn't want you overthinking a name on paperwork. I laughed. I didn't mean to. The sound just came out. You didn't want me overthinking it, so you let me put $78,000 into your brother's property. You weren't the only one paying. You transferred $7,500. I also handled the contractor. I signed the contractor agreement. Mara, don't talk like I scammed you. I looked up toward the 16th floor. Then what would you call it? Daniel lowered his voice. I have to go into this meeting. I'll come to your place tonight. We'll talk. Fine. I hung up. I didn't cry. Not then. I took the elevator to the 16th floor. The door to Unit 1605 opened with a temporary contractor code. Late afternoon light spilled across the oak flooring I had spent 3 weeks choosing. The sofa had not been delivered yet. The dining table was still in storage, but the kitchen was nearly finished. Warm white cabinetry, a quartz backsplash with soft gray veining, brass pendant lights over the island. I remembered Helen standing there saying, "This quartz costs more, but guests will see it. It'll look much better." She was the one who rejected the cheaper sample I had originally selected. Daniel had said, "If Mom likes it, indulge her a little. We're going to live here long term." So I upgraded. Now the kitchen was more valuable, and it belonged to Evan. I walked through every room, not to search for evidence, just to look at everything through the new information. The walk-in closet I had paid extra to customize. The second bedroom where Evan asked for a built-in desk nook. The bathroom where I changed the shower glass because Daniel said frameless looked right for a newlywed home. Every old sentence meant something different now. I left the condo at 4. I went back to the one-bedroom apartment in Lakeview that I had rented for nearly 6 years. I had not given it up yet because my lease ran through the end of July. Daniel had once told me, "Keep it for a month after the wedding. We can move slowly." His lack of urgency had accidentally saved me from having nowhere to go. I took off my shoes, sat at the dining table, opened my laptop. I had a habit of keeping every invoice in a cloud folder. Renovation, appliances, furniture, lighting, window treatments, design fees, contractor draws. I started adding $12,800 for cabinet work and installation upgrades, $8,950 for flooring upgrades and labor, $6,400 for electrical and lighting, $7,870 for plumbing fixtures, shower glass, and hardware, $5,600 for the stone upgrade, $4,920 for window treatments, $11,700 in furniture deposits, $8,340 for an upgraded washer, dryer, oven, and dishwasher. The rest was design consultation, delivery, paint, custom shelving, and smaller expenses. Total, $78,460. Of that, $59,200 came from my personal savings. $19,260 went on credit cards. 2 cards still carried balances. The only money Daniel had ever transferred to me was $7,500. Memo. For all your renovation trouble. I stared at that line for a long time. Not our share of the renovation. Not condo expenses. Just for all your renovation trouble. Like a tip for a project manager. I opened the renovation group chat. The designer asked about closet rail height. Daniel replied, "Whatever Mara wants. She's the boss of the house." Helen wrote about the backsplash. Upgrade it. A newlywed home shouldn't look cheap where guests can see. Evan asked, "Will the guest room fit a 72-inch desk? I may work from there when I'm in Chicago." I had measured it for him. The contractor requested payment. I sent it. The furniture store asked about delivery dates. I answered. For 6 months, I had been the person responsible for a home that the legal paperwork did not even connect to me. At 7 that evening, Daniel knocked on my apartment door. He brought takeout from the Thai restaurant I liked. Pad See Ew. Tom Yum. Mango sticky rice. Whenever we had a small fight, he usually did things like that. I opened the door. He looked at my face. "Mara, come in." Daniel set the food down. He didn't sit right away. I know today was a shock. I'm not shocked anymore. "Mara, I'm sorry I didn't explain the title clearly." "Why?" "I told you. When we bought it, my financial profile wasn't ideal. Evan was easier for the mortgage. The title is in Evan's name too. Because of the mortgage. And later we could refinance or transfer. Is there anything in writing? Daniel went quiet. Any agreement between you and Evan saying the condo is really yours? My family doesn't do paperwork like that. I laughed. But you were very careful to make sure the title was legally in Evan's name. Daniel frowned. You're trying to turn my family into villains. I'm asking questions. He sat down. My parents put almost $400,000 down. Evan is only holding title. After we marry, you and I are still living there like we planned. What if Evan wants to sell in 5 years? He won't. You're sure? Yes. Why? He's my brother. I looked at Daniel. 4 years together. He had once flown home early from Boston because I had food poisoning. He had sat beside my mother in the hospital when my father had knee surgery. He had not been cruel every day. That was what hurt. If he had always been terrible, I would have left long ago. I asked, "Do you understand the problem?" "I understand you feel excluded." "No, Mara. The problem is that you knew I was draining my savings and carrying credit card debt to improve Evan's asset, and you decided I didn't need to know. We're getting married. That makes it more important that I know." Daniel rubbed his forehead. You really tracked every expense? I turned the laptop toward him. $78,460. He stared at the number. That can't all be renovation. It isn't. It includes furniture and appliances. You chose some of the upgrades yourself. I'll show you who requested each one. Daniel exhaled. I gave you $7,500. Yes. I pulled up the statement. So the net amount I'm out is $70,960. Daniel looked at me. You're treating me like a debtor? I'm calculating money I put into property that does not belong to me. We're about to be husband and wife. I thought we were. He froze. I asked, if the building access app hadn't failed today, when were you planning to tell me about the title? Daniel didn't answer. I asked again. Before the wedding? He looked down. I hadn't thought about the timing. I laughed. That was the answer. He thought the closer the wedding got, the harder it would be for me to walk away. I closed my laptop. Tomorrow I want to talk to someone at the building sales office. Why? To understand who was present when the unit was purchased and how it was represented. Mara, are you investigating my family now? I'm checking what I put my money into. Daniel stood. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I looked at him. You still think I'm the one making it bigger? He picked up his coat. Mom booked that late engagement dinner for both families Thursday night at Lakefront House. Aunts, uncles, everyone will be there. We can talk before then. Don't drag the family into this. I knew about the dinner. Because of work schedules, our families had never held a formal engagement party after Daniel proposed. Helen had decided to combine a late engagement dinner with final wedding planning, rehearsal dinner details, seating chart, and other last arrangements. Around 25 close relatives would be there. I had always thought it was strange to hold an engagement dinner a month before the wedding. Helen said, "The important thing is that the families get together." Now the timing suddenly felt useful. I said, "I'll be there." Daniel looked relieved. "Good. We can talk calmly." I nodded. "Yes. I want everything clear too." After he left, I called my father. He listened to the whole story. He was quiet for a long time, then asked, "What do you want me to do?" "Thursday, you and Mom come to dinner as planned. And before then, find me an attorney." Dad said, "Done." I sat back down at my laptop. Outside the window, the L train passed, the metal wheels humming faintly. For the first time since seeing Evan Cross's name on the management screen, I no longer felt panicked. I had numbers, messages, invoices, payment history. I was missing only one thing: the truth about how much Daniel's entire family had known. The next morning, I went back to the building, but I didn't go up to Unit 1605. I went to the old sales office on the third floor of the retail podium. The development was almost completely sold out, but a few staff members still handled resale support and original closing records. The woman who met with me was named Kendra Walsh. I recognized her immediately. 6 months earlier, Helen had brought me to the showroom and introduced me to her while we were asking about window treatment packages and storage options. Kendra recognized me too. "Mara, your wedding is coming up soon, right?" I gave a faint smile. "Maybe." She studied me for a moment. I placed a copy of the renovation proposal on the desk. "Kendra, I need to confirm something. When Unit 1605 was purchased, was Evan Cross the buyer from the beginning?" She didn't answer immediately. "I can't disclose private transaction information beyond what is available in public records." "I understand. I'm only asking about conversations I was personally part of, or things you directly witnessed." She nodded. I said, "Do you remember the day Helen brought me here and introduced the unit as the home Daniel and I would live in after the wedding?" "Yes." I could see a flicker of discomfort in her expression. "Daniel's mother said the two of you would be living there after the wedding. Was Daniel present during the purchase process?" "A few times." "Evan?" "Yes. He signed buyer documents. When I was present, did anyone ever tell me Evan was the owner?" Kendra shook her head. "Not in front of me." I asked, "Could you put in writing what you personally witnessed? You don't need to disclose title information. Just confirm that Helen and Daniel represented the unit to me as Daniel's and my future marital home, and that nobody corrected that understanding while I was discussing renovation spending." Kendra thought about it. "I can send a factual email. I don't want to get dragged into a family dispute." "I don't want to drag you into one." She looked at me. "What happened?" I said, "I just learned Evan is the owner." Her expression changed. Only slightly, but enough. "You knew?" She was quiet. I asked, "Since when?" "From the closing file." "Did Daniel know?" Kendra said carefully, "I can't speak to anyone's legal state of mind, but he attended some of the meetings." That was enough. I didn't push. Kendra emailed me around noon. It was brief. She confirmed that I had been introduced by Helen as the future daughter-in-law. Unit 1605 had repeatedly been described as the place Daniel and I would live after the wedding. Daniel had been present for some of those discussions. And when I discussed spending my own money on upgrades, nobody in her presence told me that Evan was the owner, or that I had no ownership interest. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was another piece. That afternoon, I met attorney Rachel Monroe. Rachel handled civil litigation and contract disputes. My father found her through a friend. I brought a binder. She opened it. "You're organized." "I work in project operations." "I can tell." Rachel went through each category. I explained clearly. There was no written contract saying Daniel would reimburse me for the renovation. There was no deed or written ownership promise. But there were hundreds of messages showing that his family created and maintained the belief that this was our wedding home. There was evidence Daniel knew about the title. There was evidence I paid because of that belief. Rachel was careful. "I cannot promise you 100% recovery. I understand. Anything permanently attached to the real property is going to be much harder to treat like a product you can simply remove. If you walk in and start tearing out cabinets, tile, or plumbing fixtures, You could create legal problems for yourself. I'm not planning to do that. Good. She flipped to the furniture list. Sofa hasn't been delivered? No. Dining table? In the warehouse. Nightstands? Delivered to the building but not formally accepted. Washer and dryer? Ordered but not installed. Oven? Warranty not activated. There's still a balance due. Rachel nodded. For movable items where the vendor contract still gives you cancellation, stop delivery, or return rights, use them exactly as written. Don't enter the condo and remove anything unless your rights are clear. What about money already embedded in flooring, cabinets, stone? That becomes part of the claim. Based on what you've described, there may be theories involving unjust enrichment, misrepresentation, or detrimental reliance, depending on the evidence. But litigation is expensive. I'd start with a demand letter. I want to give them a chance to resolve it. Rachel looked at me. The wedding is less than a month away? 26 days. Then their pressure point may not be only financial. I know. Are you planning to use the wedding as leverage? I shook my head. I'm planning to cancel the wedding if they can't explain this honestly. Rachel held my gaze for a moment. That's a personal decision. Financially, though, don't turn this into extortion. Don't say, pay me or I'll humiliate you. Keep the issues separate. You have the right to cancel your wedding. You also have a separate financial claim. I understood immediately. That distinction mattered. I didn't want the story later twisted into, Mara demanded money in exchange for silence. I wanted repayment because I had spent money based on facts they had hidden. Whether the wedding survived was my decision. Rachel helped me calculate the net claim. Gross out of pocket, $78,460. Daniel had reimbursed, $7,500. Net, $70,960. I did not include credit card interest, mileage, my time, missed work, small expenses without receipts. Rachel said, "This number is easier to defend." I nodded. Before I left, she gave me 2 drafts. One was a demand letter. The other was an acknowledgement of debt and repayment proposal in case they wanted to settle without litigation. I held the folder. "Tomorrow I have a family dinner," Rachel said. "You can tell the truth, but don't turn dinner into a courtroom. If they refuse to sign anything, leave and let me do my job." I smiled. Deal. Thursday night, Lakefront House was already glowing when we arrived. Helen had reserved a private dining room overlooking the lake. White flowers decorated the table. Place cards marked everyone's seats. A corner held wedding binders and sample cards. I arrived with my parents. My mother, Linda Ellison, wore a simple navy dress. My father carried her coat. Neither of them asked again whether I was sure. On the drive over, Dad had only said, "If you want to stand up and leave at any point, your mother and I leave with you." I nodded. When we entered, Helen immediately smiled. "Mara, finally." Her voice was warm, as if nothing had happened. "I had the chef prepare that salmon you like." I looked around. Daniel sat near the head of the table. Evan was beside him. Next to Evan sat his girlfriend, Sophie Grant. I had met Sophie a few times. She was 26 and worked in marketing for an outdoor brand. She wore a cream-white dress and a thin gold bracelet. Evan had once said he would buy her something nicer for her birthday. I remembered because Helen had told the story in front of me. My youngest knows how to spoil his girlfriend. The dinner had originally been arranged so both families could finalize seating, rehearsal dinner details, and the last wedding arrangements. Helen had also invited close aunts, uncles, and cousins, about 23 people. Once everyone was seated, she raised her glass. "We're less than a month away from welcoming Mara into the family." I heard the words "into the family." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Helen continued, "Before we get into the seating chart, I want to toast the two of you. I'd like to say something first." Everyone looked at me. Daniel tightened his grip around his glass. "Mara." I placed the binder on the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand up and deliver a speech. I just said, "Since this dinner is for both families to discuss the wedding, there is one issue that needs to be clear before we continue." Helen's smile stiffened. "Whatever it is, the two of you can discuss it privately after dinner." "No, this involves Daniel, Evan, and you." Sophie turned toward Evan. My father straightened in his chair. I opened the binder. "Over the last 6 months, I spent $78,460 renovating and furnishing Unit 1605. Several relatives exchanged looks. Helen said, "We know how much work you put in. I just discovered that Daniel does not own the unit." The room went quiet. One of Daniel's aunts asked, "Isn't that their wedding home?" Helen replied immediately, "It's only a temporary title arrangement." I looked at her. "Temporary under what written agreement?" She faltered. Daniel said, "Mara, I already explained." I asked, "Evan, is Unit 1605 legally in your name?" Evan looked at Daniel first, then his mother. Finally, "Yes." "Are you on the mortgage?" "Yes." "Are you on the deed?" "Yes." "Is there any written agreement stating that you are only holding title for Daniel?" Evan went silent. I nodded. "Thank you." Helen grew irritated. "That property was purchased with nearly $400,000 from Daniel's father and me. Mara only contributed some renovation money, and now she's acting as if the whole family used her." I opened my spreadsheet. $78,460 is not some renovation money to me. But you chose many of the expensive upgrades yourself. I had been waiting for that. Good. I pulled out printed messages. Quartz upgrade, an additional $3,100. Who asked for it? I read Helen's message. A newlywed home shouldn't look cheap where guests can see. One aunt looked down. I turned the page. Washer and dryer upgrade, $2,400. Who said the basic model was too loud and looked cheap? Helen's message. Another page. Custom closet. What did Daniel say? Whatever Mara wants, it's our forever home. Daniel closed his eyes. Dining pendant lights. Helen chose them. Guest room desk. Evan requested it. Frameless shower. Daniel chose it. I looked around the table. Are all of those suddenly my personal preferences now? No one answered. Helen's face reddened. One uncle said quietly, "If the condo was in Evan's name, you should have told her before she spent the money." Helen turned toward him. "You don't understand mortgage financing," I replied. "I understand enough to know ownership is not a minor detail." Daniel lowered his voice. "Mara, we still have a wedding." "I know. You're really going to turn this dinner into an argument about money?" I looked at him. "No, your family turned my money into improvements on Evan's property 6 months ago." Sophie remained silent. I noticed she was staring at Evan. I took out the last page. Daniel reimbursed me $7,500. My net claim is $70,960. Helen gave a cold laugh. "The Cross family does not need $70,000 from you." I looked at her. "Then pay it back." The room became so quiet I could hear ice tap against a water glass. It was the simplest sentence I said that night, and probably the one that angered Helen most. Because if she truly believed they didn't need my money, the easiest way to prove it was to return it. Evan said, "A lot of the upgrades are built into the condo. You can't just use invoice values and force me to pay you." "I'm not ripping out permanent fixtures," I said. "My attorney will handle that portion. For anything still under my vendor rights, I'm stopping delivery." Daniel looked up. "Attorney?" "Yes," Helen said. "You're going to sue the family you're about to marry into?" I looked at her. "You're still calling it the family I'm about to marry into?" No one answered. I took out my phone. I called the furniture warehouse manager. I had warned him earlier that afternoon that I might need to put deliveries on hold. He answered. "Mara?" I put him on speaker. "Tom, which parts of my order for Unit 1605 have not been finally delivered?" He checked. "Sectional sofa, dining chairs, and 2 nightstands. Sofa and chairs are still at the warehouse. Nightstands are at the loading dock but not accepted." "Stop all of it. Under the contract, I want to cancel anything not delivered and return whatever qualifies." "Okay, there's a restocking fee on the chairs." "I accept." I hung up. Helen stared at me. "Mara." I called the appliance store. "The washer, dryer, and wall oven have not been installed yet, correct?" "Correct. Crew is scheduled next week." "Cancel installation. Hold delivery. I'll handle the cancellation fee under the contract." Evan stood up. "You're actually doing this?" I looked at him. "You're the owner. You can buy appliances for your own condo." Evan's face went pale. Daniel stood. "That's enough." "Enough what?" "You're destroying everything." I looked at him. "I'm stopping myself from finishing property that does not belong to me." Daniel came around the table toward me. "Mara, don't do this. The wedding is less than a month away." I looked at the man I had planned to marry. He was still asking about the wedding. Not, "How could I let you carry this?" Not, "How do I repair your trust?" Just, "What happens to the wedding?" I said. "Daniel, you still think the wedding is the biggest problem." He stood still. I took out the 2 documents Rachel had prepared, placed them on the table. Option 1, reimburse $70,960 under an agreed timetable. Option 2, sign an acknowledgement of debt so the attorneys can create a repayment agreement. Helen looked at the papers like they were dirty. "No one is signing anything tonight." "Fine." I closed the binder. "Then my lawyer takes over tomorrow morning." Daniel touched my wrist lightly. "Mara." I looked down at his hand. He let go immediately. 4 years together doesn't mean enough for you to calm down?" I looked at him. So many memories came back at once. The winter before, Daniel had hugged me on the balcony of Unit 1605 and said, "We'll drink coffee out here every Sunday morning." The day we chose flooring, he laughed. "It's our home. You decide." The time I showed up sick at the job site, he brought me soup. Not everything had been fake. That was what hurt. I said, 4 years together is not permission to hide something this important from me." Daniel looked at me. "I trusted you." Then I turned to my parents. "Let's go." Helen called after me. "Mara, if you walk out now, don't expect anything to go back to the way it was." I stopped at the door, turned around. "That is exactly what I want." And I left. Once we were outside Lakefront House, I realized I was cold. Not because of the wind coming off the lake, because the adrenaline was wearing off. Mom draped her cardigan around my shoulders. She asked, "Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "No." Dad walked beside us. "Tomorrow, let the lawyer handle it." "I know." My phone kept vibrating. Daniel, Helen, Evan, a few relatives. I let it ring. When I got back to my apartment, I took off my shoes, sat on the sofa, and felt like my entire body had just run a very long distance. I hadn't even finished a glass of water when my screen lit up. It wasn't anyone from the Cross family. It was Sophie Grant. Her first message said, "Mara, I need to tell you something about Unit 1605. I sat upright. 3 minutes later, the condo isn't just a case of Evan holding title. I stared at the message, then replied, "Tell me." Sophie sent a screenshot. I opened it. A conversation between Evan and a broker named Mark Riley. The timestamp was from 2 months earlier. At that time, I was still changing cabinet fronts and waiting for furniture production. Mark asked, "How much longer on soft furnishings?" Evan, "Mara says end of the month." Mark, "If the finish matches the renderings, it'll show really well. If we list, the comps should support a better price." Evan, "Mom says let her finish first. Don't mention a sale right now." Mark, "Does Daniel know?" Evan, "Yes. He said we can figure it out after the wedding. If they want to live there for a while, fine. If the family needs to sell, at least the place will already be upgraded." I read it once, then twice. By the third time, my fingers were shaking. Sophie messaged again. "There's more." A second screenshot. Mark, "Would it be awkward to list right after the renovation?" Evan, "Wait until after the wedding. She'll already be moved in by then, and it'll be harder for her to make a big issue out of it. Mom says let things settle first, and then tell her." For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. This was not a condo temporarily in Evan's name because of mortgage logistics. They had been discussing selling it, while I was still paying for it. Sophie wrote, "I know about this because Evan once asked me to grab his laptop. His messages synced onto the screen. When I asked him, he said it was family property and you were just decorating. I asked, 'Why are you sending this now?' She took a long time to reply. Finally, because tonight, when you asked who chose each upgrade, I realized Evan says the same things to me. It'll be ours later. Don't worry about paperwork. I don't want to be the next one." I stared at that sentence. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. "Sophie, are you sure you want to send me this?" "Yes." "Do you still have the original screenshots?" "Yes." "Don't edit them. Don't crop anything else. Keep the device." "Okay." I forwarded everything to Rachel. She called me back close to 11. "This matters." "I know. It doesn't automatically guarantee full recovery, but it strengthens the narrative that they knew you were investing under a belief they created while they were already contemplating a resale. I want to cancel the wedding." Rachel was quiet for a beat. "That's your decision." "I don't want to wait for them to sign anything before I cancel it." "Good. Keep the two things separate." I looked at the wedding invitation sitting on the shelf. Mara Ellison and Daniel Cross embossed across the front. The date. The time. The hotel. I had picked it up and smiled at it dozens of times. Now it was only paper. "Tomorrow I'm sending the cancellation notice," Rachel said. "I'll send the demand letter separately." The next morning, Rachel sent a formal demand to Daniel, Evan, and the attorney who handled family property matters for the Crosses. It wasn't dramatic. There were no lines saying, "You are scammers," only facts. Mara had spent $78,460. Daniel had reimbursed $7,500. Net claim, $70,960. Ownership information had been withheld, while repeated family communications characterized Unit 1605 as Mara and Daniel's future marital home. Evidence existed that Evan and Daniel were aware of a contemplated resale while renovation was still ongoing. The letter demanded preservation of records. It instructed them not to destroy or alter relevant documents. It proposed settlement, and it reserved all appropriate civil claims if the matter could not be resolved. That same day, the furniture warehouse confirmed my cancellations. I lost more than $2,000 in restocking fees. I accepted it. The nightstands went back to the warehouse. The sofa was never delivered. The dining chairs were stopped. The appliance store canceled the washer, dryer, and wall oven subject to cancellation fees. The built-in work stayed. Cabinetry, flooring, stone, hardwired lighting, plumbing. I touched none of it. I did not send contractors in to tear things out. I did not shut off utilities. I did not damage a single tile. I left everything exactly where it was and included the value in my claim. Rachel said, "The cleaner your conduct is, the harder it becomes for them to paint you as destructive." I listened. Around lunch, Daniel came to my office. Reception called. "Daniel Cross is downstairs asking for you." I didn't let him come up. I went to the lobby with security. Daniel stood there. His shirt was wrinkled. "You really canceled the furniture?" "Anything I still had the right to cancel." "What did Sophie send you?" I looked at him. "You know already?" Evan called. "Then the screenshots are real." Daniel closed his eyes. "Mara, it was only one option. One option you never told me about. My family had a lot invested in that condo. So did I. I never said we definitely planned to sell. You also never told me selling was even being discussed." Daniel lowered his voice. "I thought after the wedding, if there was a sale, we could use my share to buy somewhere else." "Your share? Mom wouldn't let us get screwed." I laughed. "You still don't understand. Mara, I put $70,960 net into property titled to Evan. You knew your family was considering selling after the renovation. You still let me pay. I thought we would benefit eventually." "Based on what?" Daniel had no answer. No deed, no contract, no ownership interest, no reimbursement agreement. All I had was the word of a man who hid the title from me. Daniel looked at me. "I love you." I heard him. 4 years earlier, that sentence could have ended almost any argument. Now I asked, "If you loved me, why did you think I didn't need to know?" He had no answer. I said, "The wedding is canceled." Daniel's face went pale. "Did you send it already?" "This afternoon." "Don't." "Why?" "Give me 2 days." "To do what?" "I'll get Mom and Evan to pay you back." I looked at him. "If they refuse, do you still want to marry me?" Daniel hesitated. I said, "That is exactly why I'm not waiting." He stepped forward. Security watched. Daniel stopped. "You're really throwing away 4 years like this?" "No." I spoke slowly. 4 years do not disappear, but 4 years also do not obligate me to hand you the rest of my life. I turned away. That afternoon, I sent an email and text message to every guest who had RSVP'd. It was short. "Daniel and I have decided not to proceed with the wedding due to a serious issue that arose before the marriage. The ceremony scheduled for June 28th will not take place. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate everyone respecting our privacy during this time." I did not mention the title. I did not mention the money. I did not mention Evan. I did not insult Helen. I just canceled the wedding. Within 30 minutes, my phone vibrated constantly. Mom called. Are you okay? I'm okay. Aunt Sharon just called me. I figured. She asked why. What did you say? That I didn't know. Good. I did not need to turn everyone into an audience. But I also wasn't going to protect the Cross family by lying. If someone asked me directly, I would not make up another reason. Helen called 13 times. On the 14th, I answered. Her voice was shaking. Mara, did you send a wedding cancellation notice? Yes. Do you have any idea how many relatives are calling me? I can imagine. You're trying to humiliate our whole family. I'm canceling my wedding. We can still negotiate the money. The lawyers are negotiating it. Then why cancel? I closed my eyes. Because I don't trust Daniel anymore. Helen went quiet. Then her voice hardened. Over a name on a deed? No. I saw Evan's messages with the broker. Silence. Completely still. I knew she understood. Helen spoke quietly. Sophie sent them? I'm not discussing the source of evidence. That girl. Don't switch to blaming someone else. Mara, those messages were only about contingency planning. The family has a right to consider selling an asset. Yes, I replied. And I had a right to know that before I paid to improve it. Helen said nothing. I continued. Rachel will speak with your lawyer. I hung up. That night, Sophie messaged me. Evan and I broke up. I stared at it. Are you okay? I think I will be. I think I will be. A moment later, she added, He said I betrayed the family. I replied, You told the truth you had a right to tell. From now on, keep everything in writing and don't put yourself in the middle of their dispute. Sophie wrote, Thank you. I didn't know what her life would look like later, but I knew one thing. Sometimes the person watching you get used doesn't speak up immediately because they're still trying to believe it could never happen to them, until they see their own future reflected back. 3 days later, Daniel came to my apartment. This time I let him in because Rachel had already sent the proposal, and Daniel said he wanted to show me a counteroffer. He put a folder on the table. Mom and Evan agreed to pay. I opened it. $42,000. I looked up. This is agreeing? They say the built-in portion can't be removed, so they don't think you can claim the full amount. The built-ins are exactly what increased the property's value, but you can't take them with you. That is not the standard. Daniel rubbed his face. What did Rachel say? She hasn't seen this yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I pushed the folder back. Net claim is $70,960. Mara, I'm already absorbing cancellation fees. I'm not asking for interest. I'm not billing for my time. I'm not claiming missed work. I deducted the $7,500 you already paid. $70,000 is a lot of money. So it was a lot of money when it came out of my account, too. Daniel went silent. I said, Go back and tell Helen one sentence. What? If the Cross family never needed my money, give me my money back. His face tightened. He sat there for a long time. Then he said, If we pay the full amount, can you agree not to explain the reason for the canceled wedding to relatives? I looked at him. Is that your mother's condition? Daniel didn't deny it. I laughed. In the end, Helen was still most afraid of people finding out. Not losing a daughter-in-law. Not Daniel losing his fiancé. Losing face. I will not sign an agreement that forbids me from telling the truth. Nobody is asking you to lie, just not to discuss it. Same thing. Mara, give the family some dignity. I looked at him. You want me to use my silence as payment for getting my own money back? Daniel closed his eyes. That's not what I mean. But that's the offer. He stood. I'll tell them. Before leaving, he turned around. If I had told you from the beginning, would you still have renovated? No. He looked at me. I would not put almost $80,000 into Evan's property without ownership rights or a written agreement. So you wouldn't have trusted me. I shook my head. Daniel, trusting someone does not mean writing a blank check to their entire family. He had nothing else to say. The door closed. I sat down. Outside, Chicago had started to rain. I had thought canceling the wedding would destroy me, but the little apartment was still there. My job was still there. My parents were still there. I was still breathing. The only thing that had disappeared was a future I once believed was guaranteed. And strangely, once I knew that future had been built on a lie, losing it was not as terrifying as I expected. A week later, Rachel called. They want to settle. I figured. For the full $70,960. I sat up straighter. Conditions? Rachel gave a small laugh. You understand them well. Gag clause? A broad confidentiality clause. You would be prohibited from discussing the reason for the wedding cancellation with relatives, friends, co-workers, or on social media. You also wouldn't be allowed to share the screenshots with third parties unless legally required. No. That's what I expected. The money is repayment. It is not payment for my silence. Agreed. Rachel told me the Cross family also wanted the settlement described as a goodwill payment, rather than an acknowledgement of repayment. I refused that too. I don't need them to write that they committed fraud if their attorney won't agree to that language, but the agreement has to say clearly that they are reimbursing money I spent on Unit 1605. It was not a gift. Rachel nodded. I'll counter. That afternoon, Helen called my mother. Mom didn't answer. Helen left a voicemail. Linda, we're both women. Nobody is happy that this has gone this far. If Mara keeps making it public, she'll be the one people remember as the bride who canceled a wedding at the last minute. Mom forwarded the voicemail to Rachel. She didn't respond. Daniel texted me. Can we meet once without lawyers? I stared at the message, then replied, About what? He wrote, Us. I didn't want to, but I knew there were still questions I wanted answered that had nothing to do with legal strategy. I agreed to meet at a busy coffee shop near Lincoln Park. Daniel arrived first. He looked tired, not like someone who had aged 10 years in 1 week. Just like someone who wasn't sleeping enough and, for the first time, did not know how to fix the situation in front of him. He pushed a coffee toward me. Vanilla latte. I don't drink vanilla anymore. Daniel paused. I forgot. I ordered an Americano. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he said, Evan and Sophie are completely done. I know. Mom blames Sophie. That has nothing to do with me. I know. Daniel looked down. I reread the messages. Which ones? The renovation group chat. I didn't say anything. He gave a sad laugh. I really did call it our forever home. Yes. At the time, I believed that too. So did I. I didn't think my family was definitely going to sell it. I never said you definitely wanted to sell. Daniel looked up. I said you knew they were considering it, and you still let me keep paying. He went quiet. I said, That is the difference. Daniel nodded slowly. I thought, even if you found out about the title later, once we were married and living there, it wouldn't feel important anymore. I looked at him. Finally. That was the honest answer. No mortgage explanation. No temporary arrangement. Just, he thought I would be too far in to leave. You thought I would put up with it. Daniel met my eyes. Yes, I did not feel the explosion of anger I thought I would. I felt a door close. I asked, why? Because you've always been the one trying to hold everything together. He gave a small, humorless smile. When Mom said something rude, you let it go. When Evan asked for favors, you helped. When the wedding venue raised the price, you said we should keep it because the deposit was already down. I thought you would choose to preserve the relationship again. I nodded. Then you understand. Mara, what made me leave was not just Evan's name on the title. I know. No, you're only starting to know. I wrapped both hands around my coffee. I left because you watched me drain my savings, carry credit card balances, and run the renovation, while believing 4 years together would be enough to make me accept the truth once it finally came out. Daniel lowered his head. I'm sorry. I heard him. I didn't say, it's okay. I didn't say, I forgive you. I only said, I believe you're sorry. He looked up. For a second, there was a tiny flicker of hope. Then I continued, but an apology does not restore what I need in order to marry you. The hope disappeared. We left the coffee shop after 20 minutes. No hug, no promise to stay friends. We just walked in opposite directions. 2 days later, Rachel sent me the final settlement. Evan Cross signed as the owner of Unit 1605 and primary repayment obligor. Daniel Cross signed as a joint settlement obligor based on his role in the representations and related contribution arrangements. They did not admit fraud. I didn't need them to use that word. The agreement simply stated, Mara Ellison paid $78,460 in connection with the renovation, furnishing, and equipment of Unit 1605. Daniel reimbursed $7,500. Remaining reimbursable settlement amount, $70,960. Payment schedule, $35,480 within 60 days. The remaining $35,480 within 120 days. If they defaulted, I had the right to enforce the agreement and recover reasonable enforcement costs under the terms drafted by counsel. No gag clause, no restriction on telling people why the wedding was canceled. Only a narrow mutual non-defamation clause. Neither side could knowingly spread false statements about the other. I agreed, because I did not need the right to invent anything. I only refused to be forced to pretend the truth had never happened. Helen did not sign. She was not an obligor. But according to Rachel, Daniel and Evan signing was what mattered. On signing day, both sides met at the law office. No relatives, no dinner, no flowers. Helen still came. She sat at the far end of the conference table. For nearly an hour, she said nothing. When Evan finished signing, she looked at me. You really don't leave anyone away back. I replied, I'm getting my money back. When people ask why the wedding was canceled, what are you going to say? I'll tell the truth if I want to. Helen pressed her lips together. Don't you think Daniel was caught in the middle of his family? I looked at Daniel. He is 33 years old. Nobody said anything after that. Once the paperwork was complete, I stood. Daniel followed me into the hallway. Mara. I turned. He asked the question I knew would come eventually. If I had told you from the beginning, if I had told you the condo was in Evan's name before you started renovating, would we still have ended up here? I looked at him for a long time. No. Daniel stopped. I continued. If you had told me the truth, I could have chosen. I could have said I would not put money into the property without an ownership agreement, or I could have agreed to contribute a smaller amount if we were only going to live there temporarily, or we could have rented somewhere else. There were many options. I paused. You took those options away from me. Daniel looked down. I know. I did not leave because of a name on a deed. I left because you knew that name mattered, knew the amount I was spending was significant, knew your family was even discussing a sale, and still believed that by the time I found out, the wedding would be close enough that I would tolerate it. He did not deny it. I said, "That is what I cannot marry." Daniel's voice was rough. I understand. I didn't know whether he understood all of it. I didn't need to stay to find out. I left. The rest of the wedding cancellation took several more weeks. The venue kept part of the deposit, but refunded amounts for services that had not yet been incurred. The florist kept the design fee. The photographer allowed me to transfer my deposit to a family session within 1 year. I gave that session to my parents for their anniversary. The wedding dress could not be returned. I placed it on consignment. I didn't recover the full amount. I accepted that. Canceling a wedding has a cost. But that was the cost of stopping in time. Far cheaper than spending 10 years in a family that had already tested how much they could take from me. Unit 1605 changed after I stopped the furniture deliveries. I never went back. Through Sophie, I later heard that Evan bought a cheaper sofa. Helen chose a different appliance package. They didn't list the condo immediately. Broker Mark also never received the listing after Rachel's preservation notice put the communications under legal scrutiny. I didn't care whether they kept the place or sold it. The condo had never been mine. I only wanted my money back. Exactly 60 days later, my phone showed a notification. Wire received, $35,480. I was sitting on the balcony of my rental apartment. 2 pothos plants sat near my feet. One had a few yellow leaves. I bent down and clipped them away. I looked at the balance in my account. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a piece of my life had been returned. I remembered the balcony at Unit 1605. I had once imagined a low bookshelf, gray linen curtains, Sunday morning coffee, hot soup in winter, a small vase near the window. Those dreams had not been wrong. What was wrong was believing they could exist only if I married Daniel. My phone vibrated. Not Daniel. A real estate app alert. A 2-bedroom condo in Ravenswood, less than a 10-minute walk from the Brown Line, roughly 90 square meters, a small balcony, an older building than Unit 1605, but with manageable HOA fees. The asking price was within a range I could qualify for if I used the repayment I had just received, refunds from the furniture and wedding vendors, and the savings I still had as a down payment. I stared at the listing. It wasn't a luxury condo. The kitchen wasn't beautiful. The cabinets were a little dated. The bathroom needed a new mirror. But there was one line in the listing I read twice. Fee simple ownership. I laughed, then texted the agent. I'd like to see this one this weekend. Can you send me the disclosure package and HOA documents first? The agent replied, Absolutely. I put my phone down. Chicago wind moved across the balcony. Soft. No champagne. No relatives. No one applauding because I had won. Just an ordinary afternoon. And for the first time in months, the future no longer felt like a room someone else had permission to let me enter. It felt like something I could choose. I used to think love meant building a home with someone. Now I understand that a home does not begin with a beautiful backsplash or the perfect sofa. It begins with knowing where you stand, whose name is on the paperwork, whose money is being spent. who has the rights. And most importantly, whether the person beside you gives you enough truth to make your own decisions about your life. Daniel did not give me that. His family gave me permission to choose curtains, lights, cabinets, a sofa. They called me the future lady of the house, but they did not give me the right to know who the actual owner was. Then, once I found out, they asked, "Why are you being so calculating?" The answer is simple. When someone else has been calculating you from the beginning, clarity is not selfishness. It is self-protection. I did not destroy Evan's condo. I did not remove one stone. I did not rip out one cabinet. I did not take anything that wasn't mine. I only stopped what was still within my control. I canceled my wedding. I canceled my orders. I demanded my money back. And I walked away from a future other people had planned for me without my informed consent. 2 months earlier, I had stood in the building management office staring at the name Evan Cross on a screen, feeling as if my whole life had been pulled out of my hands. Now I was staring at a listing for a condo I had never even visited and felt peaceful. Maybe because this time, before choosing curtain colors, I would read the deed. And if I ever spent money renovating another home, I would know exactly who I was building it for. First of all, myself.